Welcome, everyone, to the Information's TITV. My name is Akash Pasricha. It is Monday, September 8th, and we have got a fun show planned for you today. We are talking to the founder of a fast-growing nuclear energy company about the future of that sector. We're then going to dive deep into Anthropic's settlement from late last week that is making waves in the land of AI copyright issues. We're also going to bring on our Washington, D.C. correspondent to help us figure out what the president's meeting on AI with the world's biggest technology CEOs means going forward. But I want to start with a big story that the Information published on Friday about the latest on OpenAI's finances. If you thought the pace of OpenAI's revenue growth was staggering, the Information is first to report that its top line is projected to grow even faster, but so too will its cash burn. My colleague Sri Muppidi reported that story, and I want to bring her on to talk all about it. Sri, it's great to have you. Welcome back. Gosh, this was a big story. Tell us about the numbers that you found.
Of course. It really is a mind-blowing story, but what we found is that OpenAI had good and bad news for investors. They projected higher revenue growth by the end of the decade for 2030, where they projected roughly to end at $200 billion in revenue as compared to $174 billion from its Q1 projections that we had previously written about. But also, they had much higher costs than expected. So their cash burn from this year to 2029 is roughly $115 billion. That's $80 billion higher than previously expected.
And that's total cash. So that's through the end of the decade.
Till the end of 2029.
2029. Okay. And so this is considerably higher than what you had found they initially projected a couple quarters ago, right?
Exactly. It's $80 billion higher from when I had previously written about its Q1 projections.
Okay. And so where are all these extra costs coming from? Is it compute? What is it?
Yeah, exactly. So burn roughly this year is $8 billion. $8 billion. That's about about $1.5 billion more. And for next year, it's $17 billion. That's about $10 billion more. And so a lot of these costs are actually coming from compute as well as other data-related costs. And so the big uptick is from R&D and these data-related costs, which they talk about to investors as well.
Now, there's a great chart in the story, and we're going to link the story in the show notes, and the numbers go much more into detail. But with the chart, I see that it does eventually plan to get to cash flow generation. What is his plan to get there by 2029 or 2030 even?
Exactly. They plan to get to cash flow positive by 2030. And so despite some of their uptick in costs, they expect revenue to continue growing. And they see that largest revenue changes from ChatGPT, where they expect it to go faster than previously projected. So in their projections to some of their investors, they told them that they would expect about $70 billion in more revenue over the next 6 years compared to its prior projections. And you see that with the pace at which ChatGPT is growing. So, for example, we're at 500 million weekly active users across its products as of March, I believe, and now they're at 700 million weekly active users plus. And so when you see fast revenue growth, I think they've adjusted their expectations for ChatGPT, but it does mean that their expectation for profitability goes to 2030, then 2029, which they had previously expected.
And so all the money that we've heard about them raising, is that going to cover all of this, or do you expect they'll have to raise even more money? How are they going to finance all this?
I expect them to continue raising money, but one of the concerns is around how to think through dilution for existing investors as well as for the company itself, like the founders, employees, things like that. But I think also related to their compute-related costs and data center-related costs, there are other types of capital that they can raise. So, for example, debt, and also the fact that they are continuing to build Stargate, which is their own facility. There are maybe other ways to think through financing that. And so I think there will have to be other ways that OpenAI will continue to raise, but it's obviously yet to be seen.
Right. So I mean, let's just take a step back here. I mean, these are projections, right? I mean, projections change. The numbers are what they are. The numbers are huge. One of the things I wanted to ask you is just big picture. I mean, so the fact that revenue projections have increased, the fact that expenditure, the cost side has also increased. What does this tell you about Sam Altman's sort of calculus saying, hey, we're willing to burn all this money? Or what does it tell you about OpenAI's strategy and saying, look, we don't care. We're going to keep raising. We're going to keep burning. I mean, help me get inside their head a little bit as to what they're thinking.
Of course. I think Sam Altman has said before that they expect this to be one of the most capital intensive companies. And you see that with the amount that they're raising as well as the amount that they're spending. But I think that what it shows me, just giving and tracking the company closely across both its revenue projections as well as like its cost projections, is the fact that this is a unique company, and Sam and the company will do very unique things to make it happen. The fact that they, for example, have talked about infrastructure as a service in a way where they liken it to AWS, where they can maybe sell different types of like compute, or that really shows that their ambitions are beyond just like the ChatGPT product.
And they can actually diversify. I mean, this is one of the things you wrote in the story, is that they are really looking to diversify revenue, although it's a little bit cloudy as to, because one of the things you said in the story was that the revenue from API, it might be a little bit less, might be baked into the ChatGPT. I mean, we don't actually know how that's going to be diversified, but it strikes me that they're going to have to get beyond just the chatbot sort of thing.
Of course. And I think that you see that with their projections too, where they talk about new products. And we've written about this in the past, where it could include things like free user monetization, which we've interpreted to be, for example, affiliate fees, or maybe even ads, which both the CEO Sam Altman and CFO Sarah Fryer have talked about. And so this might look like, for example, $2 to $15 as an average revenue per user, and have gross margins similar to Meta's in terms of 80 to 85%. And so those are other avenues in which OpenAI could also think through monetizing more. And so they generate about 110 billion from these products that they've told investors from now to the end of the decade.
All right, great. Well, Sri, thank you so much for coming on. Anytime there are numbers to do with OpenAI, it's always, I'm racing to go click the story, because the numbers, they change so quickly, and as we've seen, they just get bigger and bigger. So we will be watching your byline for more updates on that. That is Sri Muppidi, our OpenAI and Anthropic reporter from The Information. Okay. Well, we've all heard about the power that AI is going to consume over the years. It is going to be a big expense for AI giants, and one of the emerging technologies that big tech firms have increasingly been looking at is nuclear energy. Now, there are tons of companies in the space. One by one, we're going to bring them on to talk about what they're building. But this morning, I want to bring on Matt Loszak, the CEO of Aalo Atomics, a company that just raised another $100 million in a funding round led by Valor Equity Partners. Matt, it is great to have you. Welcome to TITV.
Thanks so much for having me. Great to be here.
So, look, I just want to take a step back here before we get into Aalo's business. I mean, talk to me about where we are at in the story of nuclear, just broadly speaking.
Yeah, so I think it's record good time for nuclear right now. There's kind of record levels of public support, investor support, government support, and like you pointed out, arguably most importantly, support from the right type of customer. So that is AI data centers. They present an immense amount of demand. We're talking about 40 gigawatts in the US alone in the next 5 years, 100 gigawatts globally. And that is just an unprecedented amount of power. So that's like creating 40 new cities in a time span of 5 years. And the last time that happened was basically never. So it's a really great time for nuclear, and we are very excited to help push this way forward.
So one of the things about nuclear is that nuclear takes a long time to build, whereas one of the biggest consumers of this power, AI companies, that's happening right now. So talk to me about where Aalo Atomics fits into that story, and how you plan to satisfy that demand, that it's not going to be 5 years away. It's literally happening right now.
Yeah, exactly. So that's a big part of why we exist. So right now it takes around 7 years in a best case to build a gigawatt scale nuclear plant, maybe 10 years or even longer for the most recent ones. And the reality is it takes around 1 year to build these data center buildings that house all these GPUs. So really what you have to do is you have to have a factory that can mass manufacture slightly smaller nuclear reactors and power plants and mass produce them at a faster clip. And so that's what we're doing. It's an advanced reactor with a lot of great inherent safety characteristics, and equally importantly, something that can be deployed at the same pace as these hyperscalers.
So Aalo's pitch is that you can build these plants faster than they ever have been able to build. Is that the idea?
Yeah, that's a big part of it. But I mean, I really think it's worth highlighting nuclear is kind of like this holy grail energy source. So for advanced nuclear, it doesn't need water, doesn't need a magma pocket, can be located anywhere. It uses 100 times less land than renewables like solar or wind. And right now, you see the two biggest data center projects, the XAI Memphis project and the Abilene OpenAI project, is basically, they sited at those locations because there was a lot of natural gas there. But the problem is for 1 or 2 gigawatts, yes, there's existing pipeline. For 40 gigawatts, that pipeline simply does not exist. So if you have to do new fracking, new pipeline expansion, et cetera, you might as well go with the ultimately best solution, which is nuclear, because it's clean, baseload, works anywhere, and when mass manufactured and done right, can be very quick to deploy.
And that was one of the things I wanted to ask you about was, well, a lot of the time when these nuclear companies were founded, I think you guys were founded fairly recently, 2023, if I'm not mistaken, right?
That's right.
So you were founded 2 years ago. Even if it was 3, 4, 5 years ago, I mean, the scale of data center that nuclear companies were building for was much smaller, I think, before the advent of the most recent AI boom, at least. Now we've got these data centers that are huge and that they're bigger than I think a lot of nuclear companies might have fathomed. So how do you see a company like yours sort of scaling up to meet that size of demand?
Well, we've made a lot of decisions that really are well suited to help meet this scale. And I'll give you maybe a few examples. One big one is our fuel supply chain. So a lot of nuclear companies chose to use HALEU, which is higher enrichment fuel, or TRISO, which is a fuel that's really kind of well supported or kind of well suited for remote diesel applications. But the problem with those fuel supply chains is they're basically non-existent. And so if we stand any chance at meeting the demand that these hyperscalers present, we decided to go with off-the-shelf uranium dioxide, which is used to power the entire water-based fleet around the country today. So we're essentially doing an advanced reactor using traditional fuel for supply chain reasons. And the advanced reactor component essentially gives it a little bit better kind of inherent safety, even though nuclear is already very, very safe. And it also helps with mass manufacturability. So those are the decisions we made to make sure that we basically did what a startup is supposed to do, which is go talk to customers, ask what they want, and design around that.
And how does that then address the issue that many nuclear companies have had, which is these facilities inevitably going over budget? We wrote this great story. I'll link it in the show notes. It was one of our weekend big reads on the nuclear sector. And the reporter, I should say, not reporter, editor, Nick Wingfield, who took the role of reporter writing the story, he wrote about how these projects have really gone over budget. How do you aim to address that issue?
Well, first of all, our first plant is going to be certainly more expensive than our eventual plants, our nth of a kind, as they're called, and that's kind of to be expected. So, if you're mass manufacturing something, you're going to come down a cost curve. You're going to have learning, and your first plant is going to be more expensive. The good news is this customer has a kind of higher willingness to pay as long as you can get things done quickly and efficiently. And so
this customer, meaning the people that, I mean, you're not talking about any customer in particular. You're talking about big tech companies.
Yeah, this customer profile, right? So the hyperscalers have kind of shown that they're willing to pay 10 to 20 cents per kilowatt hour for baseload power that can be delivered very rapidly. Basically, for them, it's existential because if they don't move quickly, they'll lose to another hyperscaler. And so speed is the name of the game there. And they're willing to pay this premium for that speed. And that allows us to move quickly, start a little bit higher in the cost curve. And then, of course, as you mass manufacture something, you can bring it down in cost.
So you're saying that we're not concerned that it's going to cost us more than we might think, maybe to build one of these plants. We're still going to be able to make enough money, on the revenue side from these companies. That's not a concern for you in the short term. In the long term, you're saying you're going to try to bring that cost down.
Yeah, I mean, we have a pretty good sense of how much this will cost because we're actually building things. So most of our cost estimation is based on real quotes and estimates and real data from the things we've built so far. And so, we're just making sure that the costs that we're forecasting and that we're estimating are in line with what the customer is willing to pay. But that also making sure that we have a very clear path to cost reduction over time.
Right. Last question for you. I want to get a picture of the way you think about regulations right now for nuclear. We've seen the Trump administration has been largely supportive of this technology. This is, as we've talked about, it's not just a 4-year journey. It's going to be a 5, 10, 15, 20-year journey. How do you think about the direction in which regulations are going? And how do you think about if the next administration might be as supportive or not about this technology?
Well, yeah, fortunately, nuclear has pretty solid bipartisan support. So, Biden was very pro-nuclear. Trump has been very pro-nuclear. And what's really exciting is the recent executive orders from Trump have really served to kind of streamline the pathway for new nuclear to get built. So these executive orders, one, for example, has pushed towards achieving criticality under DOE authorization by July 4th of next year, which would be a very nice birthday present for the nation. So we have a bunch of companies pushing after that. And we actually have a very uniquely qualified team to go that route because we have the only team in the country that's ever previously achieved a DOE approval for construction for a nuclear reactor. And so we feel very kind of confident in our ability to meet that timeline. And we know how to do this. We've done it before.
Right.
And yeah, we're very excited because this could be potentially the world's first co-located and co-built nuclear plant and data center, the Aalo X, our first power plant that we're on pace to go live with next summer. So we're very excited. And yeah, we can't wait to show you the world what we can accomplish there.
Great. Well, Matt, thanks so much for coming on the show. I appreciate it. Next time you come on, I think we look forward to having a bit of a longer discussion about how this technology is evolving and also the different stakeholders that are at play. But that is for the next time we have you. Matt Loszak, that is the CEO of Aalo Atomics. Okay. Well, Anthropic last week agreed to pay $1.5 billion in a settlement with a group of authors that alleged the AI company trained its models on 500,000 books without permission. If you're doing the math, $1.5 billion divided by 500,000 books comes out to about $3,000 per book. Whether that's a lot or a little is up for debate, but we have heard that many, many lawsuits like these from content companies are still going on. We've talked about it a lot on the show, and so I want to bring on someone to tell us more about her view on how these issues could play out. Cecilia Ziniti is the CEO of GCAI. She is coming to us. It's her first time on TITV. Cecilia, it's great to have you. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. Big fan of the information. Thanks for hosting.
So this settlement came out late last week. You've had the weekend to reflect on it now. What were some of your weekend reflections now looking back on it?
I would say the settlement is a waypoint on our journey around what does it mean to train data and what does it mean for copyright authors. And the most important, I guess, takeaway is that Anthropic elected to pay for infringement that at least was ruled to possibly be there. And, in terms of timing, it feels like a Napster moment in the sense that we're proceeding to more of a licensing scheme for training data.
And so you think this is going to be the norm? These licensing deals are going to become more commonplace?
I do. I think a market-based solution is where this was always going to go. And the reason I think that is all the history, right? So originally we had the biggest fair use case ever was the Betamax case, literally over VCRs. And at the time, there was a question if copyright owners could make money on VCR tapes. And then, of course, we know they did. And it happens kind of every time there's a new tech. How does the market adjust and what do the economics become?
So let me ask you this. If you look at just the deals between the news publishers, for example, and the AI companies as one category of licensing deals, lawsuits that are sort of in play right now. Who do you think has the bargaining power in these arrangements?
AI's genie is out of the bottle in the sense that the usefulness to society, the usefulness as a tech across every spectrum is clear and recognized, including by the courts. So if that's where we're going, then the question is, how do we balance the need for very high quality training data, like was at issue in this case, to make AI keep getting better? And so I think the question really becomes like, where is society going to put that balance and who gets paid? In the case of the news publishers, some have adjusted very well. So New York Times found other revenue streams. They've got the New York Times food app, Wordle, that kind of thing, in addition to just the print journalism. Outfits like, of course, The Information do the high quality journalism behind a paywall. But how those business models evolve and how, American journalism or just copyright in general moves forward, I do think the balance of power is quite shifted to the AI companies.
And do you think that's a good thing?
I'm a tech maximalist, tech optimist about AI. I run an AI company. There was Mark Andreessen's, kind of time to build, uber techno optimist view. I think in the long run, AI will be like the internet and have incredible advantage.
Right.
But I think creatives have to respond, right? And you see that, right? You see things like CAA is creating essentially digital twins of talent to be able to license.
Right.
I believe we will see licensing schemes emerge, and that's also why this is exciting, right? You can imagine a system where authors get paid when their things get used for training data. It's not that hard to imagine, particularly if the appetite for this training data is so high and the AI companies have so much money. So I think a market-based solution will emerge.
Do you think it remains with the flat fee deals that a lot of these licensing deals have taken the shape of right now, or do you think it evolves into a usage-based model?
I think that we're going to see more of a usage-based. So when I think about, for example, you could look at a model of online advertising, right? So Google obviously has figured out micropayments. Every time we click on a sponsored search, there's a payment.
Right.
So as a technical matter, I think it's possible. I think it's a red herring to say it's incalculable. But who becomes that iTunes? What is the system? Is it something like an ASCAP, which is the music licensing kind of regime? That I don't think a leader has emerged yet in that.
Great. And last question for you. I mean, we see the licensing deals. We also see the settlements. One way that I've been thinking about this is, hey, do we see the AI companies just use the data and then settle? And do those settlements sort of happen at a higher rate or a faster rate than news companies can strike these licensing deals? I mean, I guess my question is, do you think the settlements will become more commonplace in the short term than the licensing deals, and then the licensing deals have to catch up? Is that how this is going to play out?
So, it's always a question, ask for permission or ask for forgiveness. But I think that the model companies, just like Anthropic, in this case, they're staffed up with lawyers. Each of Anthropic and OpenAI have big legal teams now spending on the very best. But thinking about it from the standpoint of like planning in advance and getting creative with licensing deals, getting creative around what user data they end up taking in. We saw Anthropic last week change their privacy policies where they will default train on consumer information.
Right.
So I think that the companies will get more creative. I do think we're going to see huge foundation model companies have the stomach and the money to both litigate and to create big compliance frameworks. So my expectation is that we'll see fewer kind of small model company challengers. And the big ones will definitely have legal in mind, employ people like me to help them kind of do it in a copyright effective manner.
Great. Well, Cecilia, thank you so much for coming on the show. Next time we have you on, we're going to hear more about what you're building at GCAI, because I think it's a fascinating business, and the intersection between law and AI and copyright and tech. I mean, there's a lot to get to. So thank you so much for coming on. That is Cecilia Ziniti, the CEO of GCAI. Well, late last week, President Trump hosted a dinner at the White House for a who's who of the tech elite. More than 30 top tech executives, including Mark Zuckerberg, Tim Cook, Bill Gates, leaders from Palantir, AMD, Figma. Oh my gosh, they all gathered together to talk about policy and technology. I want to bring on Sylvia Varnham, who reports on all things Washington, D.C. and technology for the information to help us understand where this story goes from here. Sylvia, it's great to have you. Welcome back to the show.
Hey, Akash, great to be here. Thanks for having me.
So, look, I do want to talk about the broader meaning of this meeting, but just give us the 20-second recap. Why exactly did this meeting happen in the first place?
Yeah, well, it was a pretty stunning scene, wasn't it? Having all of these big CEOs coming together for a dinner at the White House. The White House billed it as an opportunity for the group to sort of discuss how America can get ahead in the AI race. And it also came after an event was held earlier in the day, hosted by First Lady Melania Trump, that focused around AI and education.
And so they talked about AI and policy and sort of, I mean, what was even the discussion topic?
At the dinner itself, as we saw, the CEOs went around and really praised Trump, really flattered him, pumped him up, talked
Right.
about his leadership.
I saw these compilation videos of them all saying, hey,
Right.
thanks for that. Thanks for this. We
Exactly.
like that.
Right. Yeah. And it's actually really interesting to remember that some of these people, including Sam Altman, including Mark Zuckerberg, had previously been quite critical of Donald Trump.
Right.
So I think what this meeting really underscored is that those days are over, and these companies and these individuals are really getting behind the administration as they seek to sort of build out these huge AI businesses. But in terms of what was actually discussed at the dinner, I'm told that President Trump really wanted to understand the obstacles that these companies view as being in their way as they try to sort of win this global AI race. They discussed China, they discussed the enormous energy and power demands of AI, European regulation, and really just canvassed what roadblocks these companies saw as having and how to sort of smooth the path for them to build out these businesses.
I thought it was funny. I mean, the analysis I was running, just seeing the photos, was like, who's sitting where? You know, who got the seat next? Zuckerberg was sitting right next to Trump. You had the people at the end of the table. I don't know if they felt like, oh, you know, I was the last person drafted to the team or something. I don't know. Anyway, we could put that analysis aside. What I really want to ask you about, Sylvia, is sort of what you think both sides got in this meeting. And so on one hand, there's what Trump got, and on the other side is what big tech got, or what these CEOs got. So let's start with the Trump side of the equation. I mean, what do you think he was getting out of this meeting?
Well, I think for Trump, he had the optics of having these huge names in business gathered around him, flattering him, as I said, praising his leadership and demonstrating loyalty to his administration, which of course we know plays well with Trump. And secondly, he got these quite sizable commitments from the companies. Mark Zuckerberg, for example, talked about how Meta platforms would invest $600 billion in the United States through 2028. Tim Cook threw out a similar number. So I think that was a win for Trump. And I think for the technology CEOs in attendance, what they got was, firstly, they are all trying to build these businesses, and they really want to shape AI policy as it's evolving. They're looking for a hands-off administration. They are wanting to do what they want to do with limited intervention. So I think that that's very apparent in this kind of exchange of power. Remember, these companies are also, in some cases, fighting lawsuits with the government as well. So there are sort of a number of different incentives here for them to be in Trump's good graces. And I think that this dinner and the earlier event focused around AI and education was just further opportunity to show alignment with the administration and I'm sure in their mind help to advance some of these business goals that they have.
Did the topic of AI safety come up at all on the dinner?
Yeah, I'm told that Trump did talk about it at the dinner. I understand that he basically talked about the need for AI technology to be deployed responsibly. The president from my understanding, believes that, over-regulation will hinder these companies and hinder America from winning the global AI race, but that he also emphasized at this dinner the need for the technology to be used responsibly.
Right. And presumably this is also something that Melania Trump, that event that just happened before, I mean, it's central to AI in education.
Right. And remember, Melania Trump previously supported legislation criminalizing a non-consensual AI deepfakes, for example. And she has talked about online youth safety before. So this is an area of interest for her. And I think it'll be interesting to watch whether she becomes more of a prominent voice on these issues, because we are seeing AI safety become more and more of a concern as more people use these products. We're seeing more news stories, more lawsuits, more concerns being raised. And so I think it will also be interesting to see how President Trump kind of reconciles this goal of sort of limited regulation, limited intervention, with also ensuring that the technology is being used and overseen responsibly.
Right. And last question for you, Sylvia. Did they get food? I didn't pay attention. Did they get food? I mean, that must have been a pretty nice meal at the White House. Right? What did they eat? I never see the photos of them eating the actual food. I just see them around the table talking. So
that is a great question. I must confess, I actually don't know the tea on what they ate. I'm sorry to disappoint.
That's okay. Well, next time I'll have to really zoom into those photos to see if there's any food on the plate, because you call it a dinner. I don't know if that was a dinner. That was a very stressful dinner, I think. Okay, well, thank you so much, Sylvia, for coming on. That is Sylvia Varnham, Oregon, who covers all things Washington, D.C. for The Information. Well, with that does it for today's show. A reminder that we are live on this stream Monday through Friday at 10 a.m. Pacific, 1 p.m. Eastern. I want to thank Amazon Web Services, who is our presenting sponsor for this production. And I want to thank you for tuning in. We really do appreciate your viewership. I'm already excited for our next show tomorrow. And so until then, have a great Monday night. Bye-bye for now.